Testing, testing. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming down, and thank you for the team for putting on such a wonderful event and venue. It means a lot to me, and yeah. So I was asked to write a speech to set the tone for this event. I kind of went a little bit crazy with stream of consciousness here, so I'm probably going to get longer. I hope the seats are comfortable. So I spent 15 years building in this space. I was there when we thought Bitcoin would change everything, Ethereum too. Under Snowden's slogan, fix the money, fix the state, and under Occupy's Wall Street slogan of banners of banks got bailed out, we got sold out, and we are the 99%, we worked to build the future. Back then, I watched the regime masterfully dissolve the left's economic argument and replace it with identity politics. From then, I watched the future we were building get captured, co-opted, and as the general public flooded in, crypto too lost its way. Somewhere in the past decade, I became disillusioned with the crypto and this space. I stopped being able to maintain the comfortable fiction that things would work out on their own. There was a period, and I won't pretend it was brief, where I questioned whether any of this was real, whether crypto could truly cut the head off the snake, should someone dare to forge and wield the sword. Or whether it was just another scheme that captures idealists and uses them like useful idiots. I questioned whether I was building monuments to my own naivete. And what brought me back was not money, it certainly wasn't optimism, it was duty. There's a realization that if the people who understand this technology and are willing to build against the will of tyrants, against the enthralled subjects who cry compliance, safety, and moderation, if we don't build the alternative, then no one will. And we as a society will get what we deserve. And we will have no one to blame but ourselves. But before I get to what we're building, I want to acknowledge something. You know why you're here. You're here not just for the people nor the technology. You're here because you feel something. It's the same thing that I feel. You might not quite know how to articulate it. Sometimes you may even wonder if you feel it at all. It's in what you see in the media. It's in the way that people talk. It's in our politics, the theater of red versus blue. And deep down, you know, And deep down, you know that something about our society is deeply, structurally, and irreversibly wrong. This is harder than it was to write. So I think we've all sensed, even if we haven't fully articulated it, that the tools we've been building in this space might be more important than any of us originally imagined. But only if we dare dutifully build them with integrity, with virtue, and with honor. And only if we're serious about their use. I stopped pretending. I stopped being afraid of what I'd find, of what I would say. And I stopped being afraid of what could happen. And let me tell you what I found. So there's an economist named Raj Shetty. He asked a simple question. What fraction of children earn more than their parents? Now, for children born in the 1940s, the answer was 90%. That is a society of prosperity, the mythical American dream. Yeah, first gig. For children born in the 1980s, your generation, my generation, that answer is 50%, a coin flip. For future generations, Generation Z, Alpha, that number is still falling. In 1978, a single income could support a family, a house, a car, children, and a pension. Today, despite the doubling of the workforce with women duped into leaving their home for offices, two incomes can often cannot even cover rent. Our wages have barely moved in real terms for nearly 50 years, while our housing costs 10 times more, education 5 times more, and healthcare 4 times more. While our wages have stagnated, our costs of living haven't. This is what's been done systematically. It's been done over decades, and it's been done by design. Today, the median age of the first-time home buyer is now 40 years old. That's my age, and I'm graying. Our parents bought their first home at 25. And it's not because young people don't want homes. It's not because they don't want to create families. It's because the specter that lurks in the shadows, another so-called unofficial fourth branch of government. A woman named Ashley Maxwell came face to face with this specter when she spent months driving around Indianapolis with her 3 children in the back seat. House after house, showing after showing, in search of a home. She went to 80 houses. At each time she would arrive hopeful, only to find that a hedge fund had already made a cash offer 30 minutes earlier. Unlike her, these purchases had no inspection, no mortgage, just a wire transfer, and that was done. In some of her neighborhoods, 38% of homes were bought by Wall Street. A city employee in Fishers in Indiana started writing personal letters to homeowners, begging them to sell to families before investors came. And that's where we are, public servants writing love letters to strangers, pleading with them to not sell to BlackRock. By 2030, corporate investors are projected to own 40 to 50% of single-family rental homes. Housing, the most basic human need after food and water, is being converted from a man's first castle into a financial instrument by a global hegemonic landlord. The families these homes were built to shelter are being economically displaced and priced out of their own neighborhoods. Student debt, too, has displaced 400,000 young Americans from home ownership. 400,000 people who did everything that they were told to. They went to college, they got a degree, they worked hard. And through a sleight of hand, and in just one of many of the ways, the system enthralled them into debt servitude. But it's not just the economy. What I've described so far is the material betrayal. There is another quieter, and in some ways worse, happening to the bodies and minds of an entire generation. They say we are the most connected people, but in reality, we are the most atomized people that have ever lived. 61% of young adults report chronic loneliness, chronically, persistently lonely. Harvard found half of the lonely young adults said no one in recent weeks had even taken more than a few minutes to ask how they were doing in a way that felt caring. We are spending 1,000 fewer hours per year with our friends than we did 20 years ago. That's 42 days of human connection gone. Our pubs, once the center of social life, are now empty, replaced by likes, comments, and swipes that never quite say what we mean. The technological mediums of human connection are not what they appear. We are algorithmically partitioned, and we are memory holed. In recent years, antidepressant prescriptions especially for 12 to 25-year-olds, have surged to 66%. For teenage girls, the rate of adoption was 130% faster. Families report 6 to 9 month wait lists for therapy for depression. A confident, happy girl. Alexis Spence was 11 years old when she created an Instagram account, 2 years below the minimum age. The platform's AI engine immediately began steering her towards thinspo, and images of emaciated girls glorifying anorexia. It recommended accounts offering instructions for purging, extreme dieting, and self-cutting. At 12, she drew a picture of herself crying on the floor next to her phone with the words of stupid, ugly, fat on the screen and a kill yourself in a thought bubble. By 15, she was hospitalized for anorexia, purging, and suicidal ideation. Meta's own internal research, leaked by Frances Haugen, showed that they knew, and this wasn't the first time nor an isolated event. They have been caught doing this same practice on Facebook as well. Today, Instagram makes 1 of 3 teenage girls feel worse about their bodies. The algorithm drives vulnerable users towards pro-eating disorder content. And when a researcher proposed the safety changes, the leadership resisted, because anything that reduced engagement reduced revenue. Meta's own internal documents described tweens as herd animals. Alexis is 19 today. She has a therapy dog named Draco who alerts her when her parents to self-harm. She is never left alone. Her mother, a teacher, said, "We started losing her slowly, piece by piece. We were fighting a multi-billion-dollar corporation, and we have 2 different interests at heart, and their interests are not in our daughter." Her attorney said, "I wish I could say this is Alexis' case was aberrational. The only aberration is that she survived." Suicide is now the biggest killer of young men in the United Kingdom. In the United States, despite half of the population, men account for 80% of all suicide deaths. That's nearly 40,000 souls a year. More Americans died by suicide last year than by car accidents. Moreover, fertility rates in the United States have fallen 20% since 2007. In South Korea, a modern, wealthy, educated democracy, the fertility rate is now below replacement. I want you to stop and think about that for a moment and understand what the reality means. That means that an entire peoples have collectively chosen to not perpetuate themselves, to go against their very survival instincts. And it's not because they don't want to have children. It's that the economic conditions make it irrational to bring new life into the world. A woman named Ashley Sofer watched her daughter Layla unravel. Layla had ADD. She wasn't stupid, she was bright, and she was creative. But the school system could not accommodate her. Instead of adapting, they gave her worksheets that she couldn't complete. While other kids did maths, Layla drew patterns. Day after day, she sat in classroom being told in 1,000 small ways that she was broken, that she didn't fit, that the education system designed to create obedient, compliant workers had no place for her. The stress in Layla built for months. And then one day, finally, as Ashley was driving home, Layla in the back seat tried to open the car door on the freeway. Thankfully, the child safety locks were on. When her mother asked what she was doing, Layla responded that it would be better if she had never been born. A child who is full of possibility has concluded that existence itself is not worth it. Our society is grinding people down like her until they want to disappear. Now, I want you to notice something. Housing, wages, loneliness, suicide, fertility, mental health, debt. These look like separate crises. They're handled by different agencies, covered by different journalists, and debated by different politicians. But they are not separate. They are symptoms of the same machine. And that machine has a history, one that has repeated country after country, empire after empire. Every metric I described and more, wages, productivity, inequality, debt, divorce, housing, incarceration, every single one of them breaks in the same year. They all fracture in 1971. If you haven't seen it, visit WTFhappened-in-1971.com and see for yourself. There's plenty of charts there that demonstrate this. In the meantime, let me show you the machine. In 1913, a group of private bankers established the Federal Reserve, a central bank with the power to create money and lend it to governments. It's called federal, but it isn't federal. It's called reserve, but it holds no reserve. For 60 years, the gold standard acted as a constraint. Governments could print, but every dollar had to be backed by something real. Then, after the assassination of America's last aristocrat, the so-called Nixon reforms opened the Pandora's box and decoupled the dollar from gold. On August 15th, 1971, the brakes came off. Governments could now print without limits, borrow without limits, spend without limits, and there was no external force to stop them. A small minority could enrich themselves and socialize the losses not just onto the entire nation, but through the dollar's de facto world reserve currency status, socialize those losses onto the entire planet. Running alongside this engine, there is a political gear system that ensures that nothing ever reverses, one that is weighed down by the masses, one that you believe is the best system ever devised. After all, Churchill said so. It's a system where one party expands the government, takes the blame, and then gets voted out. Then the other party takes over, keeps every expansion, adds its own, takes the blame, and gets voted out. Back and forth, term after term, cycle after cycle. The state becomes larger, the debt becomes higher, the currency becomes weaker, and the people have less. This alternation looks like two directions. After all, they are two different colors. But in reality, it is the two hands turning the same crank. Just look at the candidates that system produces in any of the countries, in any of the cycles, and ask yourself, are these really the most capable, most virtuous, and most noble people your nation has to offer? No. Or are they more likely to be the ones that are most willing to play the game? The system selects for compliance and mediocrity. It is an ingenious mechanism of managed decline, where left versus right is given to you, the illusion of choice. I love systems. As a hacker, I love exploiting systems. I spent at least 10 years looking for mechanisms by which this ratchet reverses, and I don't believe it exists. There is no reform, there is no policy, and no election that can undo it, because the people in power are not your kin, and no law they would pass is designed to free you. This is the machine, along with a population conditioned to believe that this is the best of all possible worlds. Huxley actually described this in 1931. He said, the perfect dictatorship would have the appearance of democracy, but would basically be a prison without walls in which the prisoners would not even dream of escaping. It would be essentially a system of slavery where through the consumption of entertainment, the slaves would learn to love their servitude. For me, that rings a very large bell and seems to be very prescient. But I'm here to tell you that this machine is approaching its end. Just last year, in 2025, the dollar fell 39% against gold, the oldest store of value on earth. Just last year, in 2025, the US government's own auditors the Government Accountability Office, said that federal debt will surpass World War II levels by 2027. That's not in a decade, that's next year. Just last year, in 2025, the Congressional Budget Office projects that debt to be over 156% by 2055. Today, the interest payments alone now exceed $1 trillion a year. That's more than the entire defense budget. Net interest rate has more than tripled since 2017, and by 2050, 27% of all federal spending, 9% of GDP, will be going to pay just the interest of the debt. Not the debt, the interest. The government is now spending more to service its past than to fund its future. In fact, 61% of all marketable US debt matures within the next 4 years. Social Security, the program that tens of millions of Americans depend on for its survival, hits insolvency by 2034. That will trigger an automatic 28% cut in benefits. The US Treasury's own financial report calls the current fiscal path unsustainable. So here we have the GAO, the CBO, and the Treasury, all three of them agreeing. Now, so far, I've been describing America, but it's not because I'm American. I come from the other side of the planet, actually. It's because America is the best case scenario. Remember that the rest of the world is holding Americans' debt. These issues extend beyond the West and through everything it touches. What I've been describing is happening everywhere, in every country running the same model, and their own institutions are confessing it. The IMF projects that the global public debt is approaching 100% of GDP by 2030. The OECD's 2025 Global Debt Report shows interest payments across all member nations have hit 3.3% of GDP. Sovereign debt across OECD countries has now climbed from 82 to 84% of GDP in a single year. Since 2019, the debt to GDP ratio has increased 20 percentage points or more in Japan, New Zealand, and certainly in the United States. 45% of all sovereign OECD debt is going to mature by 2027. Trillions, that's going to be refinanced at high interest rates next year. UK debt is set to triple over the next 50 years. The UK Office for Budget Responsibility calls it, the UK Office for Budget Responsibility calls this an irreversible trajectory driven by aging, healthcare, climate, and defense costs. There are no historical equivalents of what is happening. I need you to understand that. The interconnectedness of global markets, the speed of which shocks move, and the global nature of the problem mean that when this ratchet reaches its end, and it will reach its end everywhere at once, there is no precedent. They are, in the most literal sense, winging it. And what does this mean? I gave you a whole bunch of stats, but what does it mean for your life? Productivity and growth will decline. Wages will decline. Waiting lists for healthcare and other government services will lengthen dramatically, if not be cancelled entirely. The pension age will increase, and taxes will continue to be increased and dumped onto a shrinking working population to fund retirees who are promised benefits the system can no longer afford. That is a smaller workforce funding more retirees, having fewer children born to replace them. The inequality will widen, and governments desperate to maintain stability will turn to financial repression, controlling your money, your movement, your choices, because that's what failing states do. And the people know. The largest study ever conducted on democratic legitimacy, with 5 million correspondents across 160 countries, found that millennials are the most disillusioned generation with democracy in living memory. And unlike every generation before them, they grow more disillusioned with age, not less. Only 16% of people under 30 believe that democracy is working well for them at all. Sophie Howard, who's 27, from Davenport, Iowa, put this simply: I have come to see our two-party system as two wings of the same bird. Ray Dalio, the founder of one of the world's largest hedge funds, has studied this pattern across 500 years of rising and falling empires. He called what we're living through a debt spiral. He said in February of this year, the world order has broken down. He warned of a great disorder arising from the period in which there are no rules, might is right, and there is going to be a great clash of great powers. Our empire is collapsing, and it is passing into history like every other over-leveraged empire before it, like Rome and like the British Empire after Suez. I want to tell you about a sign. In 1978, a Czech playwright named Václav Havel wrote an essay called The Power of the Powerless. In it, he describes a greengrocer in communist Czechoslovakia who places a sign in his shop window. This sign says, "Workers of the world, unite." The greengrocer doesn't believe in the unification of workers of the world. He's never given it a moment's thought. He puts up the sign because it was delivered with onions and carrots, because everyone else puts it up. Because that's what you do when you want to be left in peace. Havel says this sign's real message is, I am obedient, I am beyond reproach, leave me alone. And just like every other shopkeeper, every other office worker, every school teacher, they also put up the sign. And each sign gives the next one permission to put it up. And together, without anyone believing a word of it, they create a panorama of lies that everyone can see, but no one dares disturb. In our system, the signs are different. The sign in the window doesn't say, "Workers of the world, unite." It comes in rainbow flags. It's in the slogans that they say that the economy is doing great, to trust the experts, and that you'll own nothing and be happy. But the signs aren't the only slogans. They're also ideological. These signs can be seen in words: racist, bigot, sexist, diversity, tolerance, and equality. And I bet you, in at least one of those words that I said, that you felt something akin to a mental shock, something telling you that you shouldn't touch it. Something you're doing you're not supposed to. Once noble ideas have become weaponized empathy, comply with them and you're safe. Question them and you're punished. The greengrocer would recognize that pattern instantly. The content of the sign, it doesn't matter. What matters is that you change your behavior in fear, that you allow it to control you, and worse, that you ensure others conform. Most of us put up those signs every day. And it's not just because we might believe them, but because the cost of putting them up feels too high. Stop putting up the sign. My brothers and my sisters, we live in a prison of the mind, a virtual gulag. The greengrocer system kept people compliant through the fear of secret police. But ours is more sophisticated. It keeps you functional enough to work, but too sedated to resist. The system generates anxiety, and through economic precarity, and through social atomization, and through constant hum of the world that feels like it's falling apart. But then it sells you the anesthetic. Pornography, video games, algorithmic feed, fast food, endless scrolling through content designed to fill the exact void that the system created. Each one a small relief from the dread of living inside the machine that is consuming you. These are the bars and walls of the gulag, and our peers are its guards. A generation drowning in the stimulation but starving for meaning will never tear down the sign from the window. And this is part of the same ratchet, the same system that debases your money, it debases your mind. Stop putting up the sign. Now, I want to show you how this system reaches into people's lives. Mari Drez, she's a 67-year-old. She was a respiratory therapist in Indiana. During COVID, she helped people breathe. She kept people alive. And as a nurse, she worked night shifts and exposed herself to the risk of infection and routinely felt the weight of watching her patients die. When the crisis passed, she tried everything to keep her costs down. She couldn't use the heating. She stopped using the dishwasher. She had no television. Her Christmas lights went into storage. She sits in the dark to save on electricity. And despite these efforts, her December electricity bill doubled to $239. All she could say was, "There's nothing else I could do." A woman who kept people breathing, cannot even keep her own lights on. And the reason is this ratchet. The government printed trillions during the crisis. The new money flowed to Wall Street first, and asset price soared for the wealthy. The inflation arrived at Mary's door as a doubled energy bill. That is the Cantillon effect. New money benefits whoever receives it first, and by the time it reaches people like Mary, it only arrives as higher prices. Let us too not forget that this event was the greatest wealth transfer from the general public to the elite in history. Weena Tan, 59 years old, single mother and grandmother in California. She's a job coach for adults with special needs, earning $25,000 a year. She can only afford food, rent, healthcare, with the help of a federal safety net program. Her savings are only $11,000, and they mostly come from tax refunds and stimulus checks over her life. That's all she has. She's too cautious to put money in the stock market. She didn't fall prey to speculation and instead chose to save. So when the market's doubling came along, it passed her by entirely. And the best interest rate her credit union could offer her was only 0.5%, or $60 in the year on her savings. Meanwhile, the same Federal Reserve policies that gave winners $60 generated $2.4 trillion in stock market gains. 89% of that went to the wealthiest 10%. More than half of that went to the top 1%. But here's what matters most about Weena. Her entire financial future, like 58% of lower income Americans approaching retirement, actually depends on Social Security. The same Social Security that the government's own actuaries say that will be insolvent by 2034, triggering an automatic 28% cut in benefits. So the one thing Weena is counting on, the one promise the system made her, is a promise the system has already confessed it cannot keep. In April 4th, 2012, a 77-year-old retired pharmacist named Dimitri Christoulis walked into the Syntagma Square in Athens. He worked right in front of the Greek parliament for 35 years. He paid for his own pension without any state assistance. He did everything right by every measure the system uses. But then the Greek debt crisis hit. That same ratchet, though further along, the government had borrowed beyond its means, printed what it could, and then when it ran out of room, imposed austerity. That weight fell onto pensioners, onto workers, onto small business owners, onto Dimitri. His pension, the pension that he paid himself, the promise the system made him, was slashed. He left a note. It said, "The government has annihilated all traces of my survival, which was based on the very dignified pension that I alone paid for 35 years. I see no other solution than this dignified end to my life, so I don't find myself fishing through garbage cans." Then in the square, he shot himself in front of Parliament. What kind of system makes a 77-year-old man, a man who worked for 35 years and paid his own way, think that his only remaining dignity is a bullet to the head in a public square? The same kind of system that promises Winatan a retirement it knows it cannot fund. The same kind of system that prints trillions of dollars for Wall Street and sends Mary Dress a double electricity bill. It is the same ratchet, the same machine, just at different stages. It happened in Argentina in 2001. The government froze the bank accounts, the peso collapsed, poverty surged from 26% to 58% in just 4 years. The crowds banged pots in the streets, chanting, "Thieves, give back our savings." It happened in Lebanon. It happened in Sri Lanka. It is happening right now in multiple countries. And this trajectory is coming for the rest of us. It has arrived everywhere it's been tried. Every government that has printed without limit, every empire that has debased its currency, the script is the same. We are not special and we are not exempt. Who in their right mind could rationally think that the welfare state is sustainable, especially when there's no housing and especially when there is no children in the future? The solution, we're told, is to bring in more people. And now we have found out that it makes the situation even worse. We are borrowing from a future that does not exist, and the children are left with the burden. And yet, those children are told the economy is doing great. And yet, those children are told to trust the experts. And yet, the children are told that they will own nothing and be happy. And yet, we are not angry. We are passive. We are docile. We doom scroll. We nod. We continue to put up the sign. This phenomena is called hypernormalization, a term used by Alexei Yurchak to describe the situation of USSR prior to its collapse. Stop putting up the sign. One day Havel says, something, if you recall that greengrocer, something in the greengrocer snaps. Exhausted from maintaining the fiction, he stops putting up the sign. He stops voting in elections he knows are farce. He begins to say what he really thinks. He steps out of living within the lie. And in doing so, his life gets harder. He loses his position. His children are denied university. His neighbors avoid him. But something else happens. His refusal cracks a surface within that lie. It exposes the system as a game. It demonstrates that there is another way of living that is possible. Havel called this living within the truth. The parallel polis, the parallel society, begins there with the refusal to pretend, with the exhaustion of maintaining the lie. And I, like that greengrocer, have snapped. And I am asking you to have the courage to do the same. In 1978, the same year Havel wrote that essay, a Catholic mathematician named Václav Benda wrote something shorter and in some ways more radical. He called it the parallel polis. Benda was no one special. He was not a professor nor a politician. He had been fired from his job by the Communist Party. He was what they called an unemployed math theorist, sufficiently skilled electrician. He had 6 children to feed, and he too could no longer maintain the lie. So, at his kitchen table, he wrote the parallel polis strategy. His idea was this: stop trying to reform the system from within. Instead, build entirely new institutions, parallel institutions, outside the official structures. That means underground universities, independent publishers, a parallel economy based on trust, building new cultural institutions, and new legal aid networks. an entire civilization built in basements and kitchens, as well as apartment living rooms. Bender was explicit that this wasn't a retreat or some form of escapism. He said the parallel polis is not an escape from the world, but instead it represents a moral challenge to the existing structures and is oriented towards the renewal of civil society as a whole. They were building the thing that would catch the country when the regime fell. And this is what I want you to hear. It worked. A journalist named Jiří Dinspier was one of Czechoslovakia's most respected foreign correspondents. He covered the world. He was a star. He was the kind of journalist that everybody knew. Then, when the Soviet tanks rolled into Prague in 1968, the regime demanded he fell into line, and he refused. For that refusal, he was erased. For 20 years, this brilliant journalist worked as a furnace stoker and a night's watchman, shoveling coal in the basement of a building on the Prague subway. He said it could have been worse. At least it gave him time to read. But he too couldn't maintain the lie. He too joined the part of Charter 77. He kept an underground press alive, and for 20 years he worked in the furnace room publishing with no evidence that it would ever matter. And then, in December of 1989, the Velvet Revolution came. One day, Dinspier didn't show up for his shift. His colleagues feared that he'd been arrested again. But this time, it was quite the opposite. The parallel polis succeeded, and he was being sworn in as a foreign minister of Czechoslovakia. During the negotiations, they say that he broke off from the talks to go stoke his furnace one last time. And days later, he took a pair of bolt cutters and personally chopped the symbolic holes of barbed wire fence along the Czech-German border. Now, I can hear the objections forming, and let me name them. This is just an escapism or a libertarian's wet dream. You're running away from real problems. I think Bender answered this himself. The parallel polis is the most engaged form of civil action possible when the institutions themselves are captured. And mark my words, they have been captured. You cannot fix a captured institution by working within it. That's how you get captured yourself. You build something better that earns its legitimacy by actually serving the people. You might be thinking, well, crypto is captured too. It's all speculation, there's meme coins, there's Wall Street ETFs. The dream is effectively dead. My honest answer to this is much for what passes for crypto today is a betrayal of the cypherpunk dream. The speculation, the scams, the degenerates, the institutional capture is real. But keep in mind, speculation is something that people do when they can't save, when they have nothing else to lose, because their savings are inflated away. And this is what we learnt in the Weimar Republic and what the Germans did, the German public. Let me remind you that Julian Assange said that cryptography is the ultimate form of nonviolent direct action. Our technology is not captured. The cryptographic primitives are not captured. Zero-knowledge proofs are not captured. Peer-to-peer networking is not captured. What is being captured is weak stewards and the narrative, the story of what crypto is for, and that is what we are here to reclaim. You might be thinking, you cannot replace the state. To that I answer, we are not replacing the state. I am saying we're building alternatives that do what failing institutions increasingly cannot. Education, healthcare, coordination, sound money, dispute resolution, mediums that can't be surveilled and the people swayed, so that when the state can no longer deliver on its promises, and when the same forces that broke Greece and Argentina come bearing down, there is something to catch the people. When Social Security is cut by 28%, when Wiener Tan's one remaining lifeline is severed, what alternative exists? We're building the infrastructure of survival for when the state can no longer hold. You might be thinking, this is too big. I'm just one developer. What can I do? Everything starts from small beginnings, and this is a small beginning. In 1844, 28 weavers in northern England were starving. This was the decade of famine. Shopkeepers were adulterating food, adding chalk to flour, gravel to oatmeal, water to milk. A weaver's strike had just failed. The system was killing them, and the system was rigged against them. So they pulled 28 pounds, £1 each, and opened a cooperative shop on 31 Toad Lane with just 4 items for sale: butter, sugar, flour, and oatmeal. They were laughed at. They were ridiculed. No gas company would even serve them. They opened only 2 nights a week. Today, cooperatives based on Rothschild principles serve between 700 million and 1 billion people worldwide. From 28 starving weavers who decided that if the system was going to poison their food, that they'll build their own supply chain. Bender was an unemployed mathematician at a kitchen table. Deinster was a furnace stoker. You have a laptop, the internet, and cryptographic tools that these people could not even imagine. Moreover, we have capital. Our tools work. They attract capital because capital goes where it's respected. The question has never been whether we can. The question is whether we will. And let me remind you, despite what they have led you to believe, in our system, you need no permission to transact. Stop putting up the sign. I know it's long, I'm sorry. We're nearly there, thank you. So, technological advancement does not happen first in the material. Technology reflects moral choices. And I want you to look at the technology that defines our age and ask yourself, what were the moral choices produced it? What I see is a race to the bottom of the brainstem, algorithms designed to addict, platforms designed to surveil and to manipulate, money designed to debase. And its answer are CBDCs designed for total surveillance and total control? Logos is a different moral choice. Now I know what you're thinking. Great, another fucking crypto guy telling me his project is going to save the world. I've heard that pitch 1,000 times. I've probably made it myself. So I want to be very direct here. Logos alone will not do anything. But if we build it right, and we find the right people and organize them, and we start building real communities with real mutual obligations, Logos gives people the sovereign infrastructure to build networks, to build safety nets, to save themselves and each other. Crypto is a double-edged sword that can cut off the head of the snake, the international fiat system, the surveillance apparatus, the machinery of control built to debase money. But we have to forge it right. And the truth is, we haven't, at least not yet. That sword must be light and swift, running on devices in your pockets, not on server farms owned by corporations. If the powerful can wield it, then it becomes another instrument of control. The sword, it must be sharp and piercing, affecting real sovereignty and real privacy. The kind is capable of protecting you from another sovereign. If it is only compliance theater, it then becomes another instrument of control. That sword must also be hard and strong, able to withstand the coercion from the most powerful adversaries on earth. There should be no office to raid and no server to seize. Otherwise, it becomes another instrument of control. Logos aims to be that sword, a sovereign decentralized technology stack. Private peer-to-peer communication that no state can read, no platform can censor, and no algorithm can mine for behavioral manipulation. It has to run on your phone. Decentralized storage for preservation of history, where your data, your records, your contracts, your community's archives, your culture lives outside any single jurisdiction and dispersed across the planet. data that is resistant to deletion, censorship, and coercion. Privacy-preserving economic coordination and programmable contracts, a system where your transactions, your savings, your economic life are sovereign, where no bank can freeze your account and no government can debase your purchasing power, no authority that can tell you, can decide whether your politics entitle you to access your own money. It is an integrated modular stack with one purpose, the technological foundation of the modern parallel polis, a new sovereign, a new beginning for a new West. For the first time in history, we can build institutions that are resistant to corruption and coercion by design, by cryptoeconomics and by distributed systems, a system of express consent instead of implied consent, of voluntary participation and low exit costs. Its legitimacy will be earned through value delivered and not enforced through coercion and taxation. And when I say sword, I mean a tool of civic action, a tool forged to sever the dependence on institutions that have forgotten their purpose. So in closing, I want to ask you, imagine two futures. It's 2034. Social Security has cut benefits by 28%. The same debt spiral that has broken Greece and Argentina has arrived at your doorstep and not some distant country. The government has frozen bank accounts to stabilize the system. Your communications are monitored. Palantir's AI has categorized you by your social graph, your purchases, and your browsing habits. Your transactions are tracked on a central bank digital currency that you never consented to. As Dalio told Tucker Carlson, there'll be no privacy, and it's a very effective controlling mechanism. If you are politically disfavored, you will be shut off. And in this future, there is no alternative. There is no parallel institution. There is no exit, because we, the people who knew how to build them, were too busy chasing yield, too distracted, and too compliant. We were too comfortable in our chains. Now, I want to imagine the same year. The same crisis hits because the same forces that have broken every over-indebted nation in history will not make an exception. But this time, a mother coordinates her child's education through a network no government holds the keys to. She chose the curriculum, she chose the community. No bureaucrat decided where her daughter was broken because she drew patterns instead of filling worksheets. A farmer sells directly to his neighbors, real food, not chalk and flour, without a platform taking a cut, nor a payment processor deciding whether his politics are acceptable. A dissident publishes the truth, and it cannot be deleted, nor prevented from being accessed. It cannot be memory holed, because it lives on 1,000 machines across 30 countries where no single authority can reach them all. A family's savings hold their value because they are denominated in something that no central bank can print into oblivion. A community organizes mutual aid, not through an app that harvests their data, but through infrastructure that they own, that the answers to them and cannot be shut down by a terms of service update. This is not science fiction. This cryptography, these systems exist. What does not yet exist is the complete integrated sovereign stack that puts all of it together to make it usable for ordinary people. That is Logos, that is what we're building. And if you think this is all theory, let me take you back to a story that you already know. Do you remember Ashley Soifer, the mother driving home from Las Vegas with the daughter Layla, who tried to open the door on the freeway? That child that said it would be better if she had never been born? Well, Ashley didn't wait for the system to fix itself. She didn't petition a school board. She didn't file a complaint or hope for the best. No, she built a school. The Southern Nevada Urban Micro Academy. Then she and her husband were able to grow that, and they have now expanded into the National Micro-Schooling Center, and she serves the entire country. And Layla, the girl that wanted to disappear, she's 14 today, and she has recovered from anxiety and depression. That is what the Parallel Society does. It's about people supporting people, and it doesn't ask for permission. The West is in decline, and it will not collapse overnight. But today we can start building the support networks, the parallel institutions, the sovereign infrastructure. Today we can alleviate the consequences of the system, and in the ashes of the old order, we can create a new revival, a renaissance of civil society, built by the people who refuse to put up the sign. That's what the Czech dissidents built in kitchens and basements, and that's what we have the chance to build with the tools that they couldn't have dreamed of. So, with all of that in mind, what are you going to do? Will you continue to live in your pleasure prison? Continue to live in your comfortable lies? Or will you put down the sign? If you're a developer, I urge you to look at the Logos stack. Join a workshop today. Read the specs, run a node, write a module. You can participate in research. Everything we do is out in the open. If you're a builder of any kind, come join a chapter. We're organizing local chapters everywhere we can. Groups of people who are committed to identifying the issues in their own communities and building parallel solutions from the ground up. Find out what your neighborhood is missing: a school, a food network, a mutual aid system, a local economy that doesn't depend on platforms that can be shut down, and start there. The Rochdale Oat Weavers started with 4 items and in a borrowed warehouse. You can start with 1. And if you want to go deeper, today is the day. This is an unconference, it's an experiment. The people building Logos are in this room. The technology alone is not enough. We need the people who will establish the networks, the support structures. We need real human bonds that make the parallel society more than a collection of protocols. This is an open forum, a catalyst to connect, to collaborate, and to share ideas, and hopefully a seed for you to carry home. But whether you can write, join a chapter, or simply carry this conversation forward, the deeper ask is the same for all of us. Stop organizing your life around greed and status. Organize it around purpose, service, and development of virtue and character. The parallel polis needs more than code. We need men and women of integrity. And if you do nothing else, please do this one thing. Stop putting up the sign. Thank you.